Welcome to Safe and Sound, a monthly podcast on cybersecurity, presented by GrandPad and the Leighton Podcast Network.
Welcome in once again. It is time for us to speak with Scott Lean for Safe and Sound. It's our podcast designed to keep seniors safe and educate everyone about the scams that are out there and happening to us through technology. And Scott, always great to see you again.
Great to be with you, Brian.
All right. So we were talking a little bit before we got ready to get started here, and you have a very interesting name for the scam we're going to talk about today. But before we even get to that, let's remind everybody again just what's going on with scams and seniors, exactly how big the threat is.
Yeah, sadly, it's for this age group of people 50 plus, which includes me as well. It's really not a matter of if you're going to get scammed. It's just when. How bad will it be, either financially or emotionally? So our goal here is to raise awareness and give everybody some tools that they can avoid getting scammed and the terrible effects. Because last year, the FBI estimated it was over $4 billion. That's billion with a B, that was stolen through Americans through various scams, and specifically one we're going to talk about today as we kind of go deeper in this topic. And I just hate this name. It's terrible, and it's just kind of shows you the brutality of the scammers involved here. But the scammers themselves call this pig butchering, and we'll kind of go into what this horrible name means and what it's all about. But an example, there was a man from Virginia who recently was so affected after he lost his life savings to, theoretically, someone that supposedly was a woman that he developed a romantic relationship with, and he was so wiped out he actually took his own life.
Oh my.
And, sadly, that's not an isolated incident. And it's this particular scam often involves cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency inherently isn't bad in its own, and there's some things like Bitcoin that is okay, but oftentimes the scammers now are using cryptocurrency. So,
and if we could, let's pause there for just a second, because I think that's important that we explain exactly what cryptocurrency is. I think people hear that all the time, and they've heard Bitcoin a lot. They've heard how people have made a lot of money. They've also heard how people have been wiped out by it. But if you could give us just 30 seconds on what exactly is cryptocurrency.
Well, if you're confused, don't feel bad. It's immensely complicated, and I come from a tech background, and we've got people on our team that are really experts on this, but it's still confusing. So, cryptocurrency as an umbrella term is a new way to transfer monetary value from one person to another that's completely digital. Meaning, I don't have to give you cash. I don't have to write you a check. I don't use a credit card. It's a digital way to transfer value, money, between two individuals who can be anywhere in the world. And it's done in a way does not involve the government, does not involve the banking system, does not involve credit card companies, and it is virtually untraceable. And so therefore it is very often used for nefarious bad guys use it, because people buying and selling drugs and terrible things like this can use it as a way to move value, money, between themselves who are remote. It literally, I can just give you the key, the cryptocurrency key, and once you have that key, you have access to that value. We all see in movies like bad guys, they're doing something bad and they're like have a suitcase full of cash, right? And they got this, I can literally send you an email with a cryptocurrency key, and you now have access to that money.
So does the money remain digital, or can I quote unquote cash it out?
It is digital, but there's endpoints that you can cash it out. Usually you pay a fee for that, and then it's trackable. But you can now buy lots of things with cryptocurrency. So people are selling, especially certain types of things that bad guys might want, like fancy cars and boats and things. Like there's people that will let you buy a mega yacht with cryptocurrency.
And are they using cryptocurrency as a way to continue to confuse some people that are technology challenged in a lot of cases, meaning the seniors?
The main reason that they're using it in this particular scam we're going to talk about is it's a way that the bad guys can get money and it's not traceable. So because if, other than getting cash from someone, anything else, check, credit card, other things like it's like that money went somewhere. The FBI and others can trace it. But so this is a way for them to make it easier to get money in a non-traceable way. And just while we're talking about cryptocurrency, you'll see now a bunch of places in shopping malls. I just saw it in Minneapolis.
Actually, yes.
At the Southdale Mall in Edina, which is a very respectable mall, you'll see there's a
Kiosk,
looks like an
right?
ATM
Yeah.
machine. It looks like an ATM, but it's a cryptocurrency ATM. And you're like, why is there an ATM machine, a cryptocurrency? As for the sole reason, and there's a lot of elderly people who live in Edina.
Mm-hmm.
The bad guys are contacting, Scott, who lives in Edina, age 85, and say, hey, Scott, here, and they're convincing me. He says, oh, just walk over to the mall. It's just across the street. Take your $1,000 cash and just put it into the machine and type in this number, and I'll be on the phone. I'll help you through. And it's taking that cash that Grandpa Scott here had, and it's turning it into a cryptocurrency transaction and sending it to the bad guy who's overseas somewhere. And so these things, when you see these cryptocurrency ATMs, don't use them. And you got to wonder, like if you're a business owner, don't put these things in your business. I've seen a few in like convenience stores. Mm-hmm. You're just inviting the bad guys to use your place of business as an endpoint to scam people of all ages.
Well, and we've talked on an earlier episode about the banks and how they're regulated since 9/11 about know your customers. Right. Well, this takes them out of it.
That's right. There's no KYC, know your customer. It's just cash comes in and Bitcoin or crypto goes out the other end, usually to the bad guys.
And can you assume, or can I assume, I guess, that awfully easy to steal someone's credit card information if the wrong guy put that kiosk in?
Yes. I mean, I would just avoid them in general.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, pig butchering.
Yeah. So let me kind of take you through what the scam is all about. And so, these scams can affect people of all ages, but sadly, the bad guys are going after people 50 plus, but especially people age 75 plus. And why is that? First, these are wonderful, caring people. And I know I'm almost 60. And I was always taught when the phone rings, you answer it, right? And because it might be important, right? That's how we grew up, the landline when the phone rang. So we answer. Oftentimes people in this age group might be lonely and isolated. They want to talk to somebody.
Before you get too much deeper, that's a common theme that's run through all three of these episodes is the loneliness of seniors and that making them so vulnerable.
Exactly. And that's at the heart of what GrandPad is about, of connecting seniors with their family, friends, and caregivers in a safe way so you can increase the conversation, collaboration, and love between that, what we call the circle of trust or circle of care, and keep the bad guys locked out of that. So, the bad guys are going after these people, and they also know the bulk of the wealth is in people age 50 plus. They know that they have money. The other thing is people shouldn't say, well, my mom who's 90, she's not very tech savvy, or she's really vulnerable. That's really not it. These bad guys are extremely sophisticated. I've heard many stories about young, very tech savvy people that have gotten scammed. Mm-hmm. It's just that it tends to be more seniors because generally they're more likely to answer the phone. They might be a bit more vulnerable that way. So we want to give everybody some tools to avoid this. And this terrible scam today we're talking about, and this is what the bad guys call, is called pig butchering. And in a nutshell, it's where scammers steal some money from someone by convincing them, and they're thinking of that victim. They're calling them the pig, and they're going to fatten them up, meaning they're going to start with very small transactions, and it might start out as just a text message. Hey, Brian, how you doing? You go, hey, who is this? Oh, this is your old college buddy, Scott, from college. Remember me? We played football together, which it's not Scott. We didn't go to school. That's a total scam. It's a fake person, likely overseas. They're mining this information from social media to get information that, Brian went to Winona State. He did play football. Scott was on his team. They got this stuff's all available. And so they start this conversation very innocently. That's the beginning of the fattening. And they're just feeding you baloney, misinformation the whole time. And then it will be like, oh, his old college buddies who played football together. God, I'd tell you, Brian, I just got myself in a terrible pinch. I lost my job, and so-and-so and my family died. I just have this terrible, could you just find it in your heart to just, loan me $100? I just got this thing. And, oh, sure, Scott, I'd be more than happy. So now they get you to open your wallet. And it might start with $10. I've heard people, it starts out with a $3 transaction. So now they're just getting you to open your wallet and establish it. You can move money from A to B. And they'll be probing. Oh, do you have PayPal? Oh, yeah, I use PayPal all the time. No, I don't have PayPal. I don't do anything online. I don't use Bitcoin. I don't use crypto. I live out in the country. So they're going to kind of find out how they can get you. And that's all part of this process. And they just keep working their way up and getting more and more. And they're getting information to find out, well, how much money do you have? And we helped a lady that she fell victim to a scam. And through that process, she happened to mention that her only brother who she had passed away. And so they're taking that information in her name and mining that. And this is absolutely horrible that this happens, but the bad guys use obituaries. Obituaries that are posted online in newspapers are a treasure trove of information about the family situation.
It's the way the old con man used to do it. He'd read the obituary in the paper and show up and, he ordered this watch before he passed away. I mean,
right.
It's just the new version of an old con.
That's right. And they'll quickly be able to see the whole family history. There's other tools like Ancestry.com and so on where you can very publicly, again, it started out with very good, intention, but they'll get the whole family tree and say, oh, well, gosh, Scott had this rich uncle who passed away and he was CEO of company XYZ. And it appears that Scott inherited a lot of money and wow, Scott so they're going to go after people that have some funds. And so that process goes on. And then they quote, move in for the kill at the end, meaning once they've kind of gotten everything lined up, they'll make one final grab and wipe the person out financially. They'll get as much as they can. And then, of course, they're gone. You never hear from them. They cover their tracks. They've got all the money and the person's sitting there. And again, I've heard dozens of stories about people where one day they had $50,000 in their checking account. They come back the next day, it's all gone. Or people that have literally lost their homes, right, and gotten scammed out of it and are just completely wiped out financially. And of course, you can imagine emotionally what that does to someone.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the people that we're talking about here are past the working age. So how do they rebuild their income is crazy. But I think you had an example, too, you were going to maybe tell us about as well.
Here's an example of someone, and this was very public, of a man named Dennis, 82, was retired. He'd been divorced, and he met a potential person to have a relationship with named Jesse on Facebook. And, they never met in person, but they formed a relationship electronically. And he was convinced to invest in crypto over the course of this. And then, boom, this person who he'd met, who was probably a fake person, took his life savings and ran with the money, right? So just this, there's some connect point. It might be a romantic relationship. I've heard of another one where it's like, hey, I'm a soldier in Ukraine, and I know you care about Ukraine and wanting to help. It could be that I have a passion for helping homeless dogs, and you can donate money to my charity that's helping, homeless dogs. It's any type of getting people to feel some emotional connection. That's how it starts.
And how do they get people to hang with them month after month after month?
They're clever.
Yeah,
and,
clearly.
They're very clever. Often text messaging, Facebook messaging. Some cases might be emails. But again, the thing that we should know is the bad guys are really smart. Mm-hmm. The old adage of, criminals aren't so smart. Like, these criminals are extremely smart. They have really good tools. They're extremely persistent, and they're willing to invest a lot of time into it because the payoff is so large.
Right.
The reason this is getting worse, not better, is these guys, the bad guys, are making a lot of money.
Let me ask you a question in regards to those guys. This is going to sound strange to ask you this, but as someone who runs a business, I spend a lot of time training my people. They're not just pulling people off the street. There's got to be hours and hours of training going on here.
They do. These are very sophisticated operations, generally overseas, where they are trained. They have very elaborate systems and processes of how they do it, and it's like reverse sales. We all know, anybody that's ever been involved in sales, like, you got to make a lot of calls and you got to have a pipeline in that. It's the same thing here, where they have a huge pipeline of people they're calling and reaching out to, and then they get a hot lead, if you will, and then they keep working that. The other sad thing is that oftentimes the scammers, the perpetrators that are in these, usually they're big call centers, oftentimes they're under duress, meaning they were kidnapped, they were human trafficked, they have lost all their family. Somehow they were scammed, And now they're being coerced by the bosses saying, Brian, here's your quota. You got to make 100 calls today. You got to bring in $10,000 of revenue a week, or bad thing XYZ is going to happen to
Wow.
you. So they're under duress as well.
And I've also noticed recently in some things I've watched and read about, they're also working very hard to hide any accents. They're trying very hard to sound American.
Exactly. They get trained on how to hide accents. They're now, and this when I say they have sophisticated tools, they're using AI and technology speech generators, so it will take their voice or their accent and change it so that it might go from a man speaking to a woman's voice with a North Carolina accent, So they're again, we just have to know they're very clever. So I think the thing that we're trying to do is get out the awareness.
Yeah, and then, so that brings up the next question, because this is clearly an incredible scam. So what do we do to protect ourselves?
The way we think about it is education is the key, and the more you know about this, and it's really sad that we have to think about it, spend time, but it's one of those, you've got to be aware, and us as younger folks, we've got to talk to our parents and grandma and grandpa about it and just say, look, we all need to be aware of this. And we then use this acronym, the STOP acronym, S-T-O-P. So S is suspicious contacts. You get these emails, these text messages, phone calls, a direct message on Facebook or WhatsApp, you're like, I don't know, what is this? And Brian just showed me one, like, what's this text? And if it's not clear and obvious, it's like, just delete it, just block it, right? They're going to try all kinds of weird things, and they're like, oh, hey, how you been? And these kind of vague things, and you're like, well, what? Just get rid of it. Don't be tempted to fall for it, because it always starts out very innocuous. So look out for suspicious contacts. That's yes. T, threats or urgency. So a very common strategy with a scam is, we've got to invest money right now. This chance is going. I'm in jail. I need you to wire money to me right now. Whenever there's this sense of urgency that this has got to be done today or you get tonight, that should be your clue. I mean, think about it in life. How often is there something where it's really that urgent? Very rare. The O is outlandish promises. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Investing in some cryptocurrency scam from some third-party website claiming to make you rich overnight, it's like anyone who makes this claim is going to be lying or doing something illegal, or both. And then P is the payment. So anytime somebody's asking you to send money, make a payment, transfer money, go to the shopping mall and put some cash in and send it to me in Bitcoin, whenever there's money involved, that should be a big red flag where you should ask some questions. So STOP, suspicious, threats, outlandish, payment requests. And
the IRS isn't going to ask you to go buy gift cards.
No.
All right, we've got about 10 minutes left, Scott. I want to talk about a plan of action here, a last bit of time together.
Step one, talk about this with your family, your spouse, your parents, your loved ones, your neighbor. Let them know. And it doesn't have to be this big, scary, negative thing. It's just like, hey, you really need to be aware. And as a friend or as a family member, I want you to know about it. And then verifying phone numbers and check. And it's really hard to know. Like you'll have a call come in, the caller ID, and pop up and say, yeah, this is my son's phone number. And it says it's my son. And then you answer and it doesn't quite sound right. Or all of a sudden, my son, even if it sounds like his voice and he's got a lot of information, he's going, Dad, I need you to send me some money right away. It's like, my son's never asked me for that before. Yeah. And like, what's going on? Like something's odd here.
Comes back to that right. P again.
Yep. And verify and say, hey, no problem, son. Let's hop on a video call. I'll call you back on FaceTime. And that's why one of the benefits with GrandPad for seniors is you can do video calls. You can call them back. GrandPad is secure. They can't spoof that. They can see, and you can get your eyes on them and say, what's going on here? Buy time. If there's something, buy time and get other people involved, and don't be afraid to call the police. Some people say, well, I don't want to bother the police. This is not an emergency. It's like, no, you can call the police. And if you feel concerned about dialing 911, they always have a non-emergency number. You can call 911 and say, here's the situation. What should I do? And they'll advise you. But you should call the police if you suspect something. They are more than happy to help you. And I live in a smaller town, fantastic police support for this.
And as more and more of this happens, the police are building out divisions specifically for this. They can give you good advice. They know what to look for, and they can point out those red flags to you too. And again, yeah, don't call 911, but they have a non-emergency number, and they're building out more and more people on their staff to handle this.
They absolutely are. Because it's happening so much, they've got a lot of expertise. And call someone else in your family. You know, everybody's got that brother, sister, aunt, uncle who's an expert, and contact them. But the other thing I would say is don't ever hesitate to contact us, GrandPad. You can come to our website. We've got a little live chats, grandpad.net. You can call us. A human being from the GrandPad team, will answer the phone 24 hours a day. And our number is 1-800-704-9412. 800-704-9412. And say, hey, I got a question. We've got experts on our team that are more than happy to help you with that.
And you don't have to be a customer.
That's right. That's right. We just want to help seniors. But the last thing, just if someone is trying to, say, I need you to send a check here. I need you to go to the bank and wire money. When it gets to, there's some type of financial movement of money, that should be your red flag. And I think back of my mom nearly 15 years ago before we started GrandPad. That's where, the bad guys were doing the grandparents scam. Hey, Grandma, I'm in jail and I need you to go to Walmart and get a gift card and then call me with that number. And that almost didn't feel like money because it was a gift card and she thought it was her grandson. But her red flags went up and she stopped at the police station on her way to Walmart and told them, they said, Marlis, that's a scam, and that happens all the time.
I will tell you, too, watch for things that just, we've talked a lot about things that don't look normal. We had the Layton Media Winona Golf Tournament recently, and one of my employees came up and said, I got a text message from Bob, who's our CEO. And I said, let me see it. And it started with, hey, it's Robert Layton. None of us call him Robert. I don't even think, probably have to go back to his mom only when she was angry at him, when she called him Robert. And I just said, just ignore it, just delete it. We see it about once every 2 or 3 months. But you look for those kind of things too, where someone's calling themselves Robert when we all call Bob.
Yeah, that's a good tell of that. Sadly, they're quickly getting smart to that. And so you will get a text message that you cannot tell that it's not real, and it will look totally legitimate. And that's why we always tell people, get in place an established, secure way to communicate. GrandPad is the way to do that within families. For businesses, you should have some secure communication method of how you communicate with your employees. That's not text messaging. Sadly, it's very, very easy to spoof that. Within our company, we use a secure internal tool. We train all of our employees. Do not send text messages for any work-related things. We have a secure tool that requires you to log in. It's authenticated. We use multi-factor authentication, MFA. And I'll just make a comment on that. This MFA, multi-factor authentication, is now pretty much available on everything. It's been on our bank accounts for a long time when you log into your online banking. And I get that it's a bit of a pain in the butt. You got to, you log in, user ID and password, and then you've got to set up your phone number, and it will send a text message to you with a code. And you've got to then enter that code into your laptop screen. So that's that second factor. That really helps reduce, doesn't eliminate, but helps reduce the likelihood that you could get scammed. So you can set that up for your Facebook account. The reason most Facebook accounts get hacked, scammed, you see people all the time, yep, my Facebook account got hacked. They don't have MFA, this two-factor authentication set up. So that really helps reduce. It's a pain to get set up. It's worth the 5 minutes to do it, because when you get hacked or scammed, that's going to take you days, weeks to clean up that mess. And sadly, you might have lost some money doing it. So take the time to build the defenses. It's just like, we all live in houses with locks on the doors, and when we leave, we lock the door. That's a little step that we do to make ourselves secure. The same thing has to happen in the cyber world or computer or digital world. You got to have some good locks on your doors.
Because we're only going to the world's only going to shrink more and more due to technology.
That's right. That's right. So I just really encourage people to take the time, take a look and consider how GrandPad could help your family and stay more connected, increase the conversation in the family, in that private family network. where any of your trusted contacts are let in, but we keep the bad guys out.
All right. Well, Scott, once again, that is the key to why we do this is to keep you informed, to keep you thinking, to keep you understanding. And we're just going to keep with frequency and repetition, keep telling you, and we're going to get this, we're going to continue to fight the good fight.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Appreciate it. Episode 4 coming next month. Can't wait for it. It's Safe and Sound. It's a part of GrandPad and the Leighton Media Podcast Network.
Safe and Sound is a monthly podcast presented by GrandPad and the Leighton Podcast Network. Find this and other podcasts on demand at WinonaRadio.com.